The quiet page that changed the game. December 1891. The cold air pressed gently against the windows of a small gymnasium in Springfield, Massachusetts. Winter had slowed the outside world into stillness. Inside the building of the International YMCA Training School, however, something restless moved beneath the silence. The gym was not empty. It was waiting. The wooden floor carried the faint marks of shoes that had come and gone. The air smelled of varnish and effort. Above, a narrow balcony stretched across both ends of the room, and attached to its railings were two simple peach baskets, unremarkable in appearance, yet quietly holding the weight of something new. And on one side of the gym, pinned carefully to a wall, was a sheet of paper. Thin, ordinary. 13 lines written in ink no decorion. No sense of importance. Just rules. The kind of rules meant to solve a small problem. But sometimes, history does not arrive in grand gestures. Sometimes, it is written quietly. On a single page, and that page belonged to James Naismith. A game that needed boundaries. Before that page existed, there was only chaos. Inside the gym, young men carried energy with no direction. Winter had trapped them indoors, and the games they once played outside football, rugby became dangerous within confined walls. Bodies collided too easily. Tempers rose too quickly, and what was meant to build strength began to create harm. James Naismith understood something subtle but essential. A game is not defined by movement alone. It is defined by limits. Without boundaries, competition becomes aggression. Without structure, energy becomes disorder. So before the first true game could exist, something else had to come first. Rules. Not to restrict the players, but to guide them. The first lines of control. The 13 rules, written by James Naismith, were not complex. They did not attempt to control every action or predict every possibility. Instead, they focused on something deeper. They shaped behavior. One rule stated that the ball could be thrown in any direction with one or both hands. Another clarified that the ball could not be carried. A player could not run while holding it. Movement had to happen through passing. Already, something important was forming. This would not be a game of individual force. It would be a game of connection. Another rule made something even clearer. There would be no striking, no holding, no pushing, no tripping. Physical aggression was not just discouraged, it was removed. In a time when most sports thrived on contact, this was a quiet revolution. The game would not reward dominance. It would reward control. The philosophy hidden inside the rules. What James Naismith created was not just a set of instructions. It was a philosophy. Every rule carried intention. Every limitation carried meaning. By removing running with the ball, he forced players to trust each other. By raising the goal above their heads, he encouraged precision instead of power. By eliminating violence, he protected not only the body, but the spirit of the game. Because a game, at its best, reflects something about life itself. And life rarely rewards chaos. It rewards discipline. It rewards patience. It rewards understanding. The first test of the rules. When the students first stepped onto the court beneath those peach baskets, the rules were still just words. Ink on paper, unproven, uncertain. 18 players divided into 2 teams, 9 on each side. They began slowly. Confusion filled the space where instinct once ruled. Players tried to move as they had before, but the rules pulled them back, forced them to think, to adjust, to unlearn habits built on force. Passing replaced charging. Positioning replaced chaos. Timing replaced speed, and gradually, something began to take shape. The rules were not limiting the game. They were revealing it. The symbol of the page. That sheet of paper, pinned quietly to the wall, became something more than instruction. It became a symbol, a reminder that structure creates freedom, that boundaries do not exist to hold us back, but to guide us forward. Without those 13 rules, the game would have collapsed into the same violence that had plagued the gym before. With them, it became something entirely different, something sustainable, something meaningful. Imperfection and the original rules were not perfect. They were never meant to be. There were no dribbles, yet only pass out. There was no shot clock, no three-point line, no modern flow. After every successful shot, the game paused while someone retrieved the ball from the basket. It was slow, sometimes awkward, often incomplete. But within that imperfection was something powerful. Potential. Because rules, like people, are meant to grow. The quiet expansion. As the game began to spread beyond the walls of the YMCA, the rules traveled with it. Copied, shared, adapted. Different gyms introduced small changes. Players experimented with movement. New techniques emerged. Dribbling would come later. Speed would increase. The game would evolve far beyond its original form. But the foundation, the spirit of those first 13 rules remained intact. Even as the sport grew into massive arenas and global competitions, its core never changed. Control over chaos, precision over force, team over individual. The game becomes the teacher. Years later, the sport would give rise to leagues like the National Basketball Association, where the game reached heights that James Naismith could never have imagined. Players would become symbols of greatness. Moments would be replayed across generations. The sound of a bouncing ball would echo across continents. But beneath all of it, the game continued to teach the same quiet lessons. You cannot run endlessly with control. You must pass. You must trust. You must adapt. You must play within something larger than yourself. And perhaps that is why the game resonates so deeply. Because it mirrors something true about life. The return to the page. If you were to return to that gym in Springfield, Massachusetts, you would not hear the noise of modern arenas. You would not see flashing lights or roaring crowds. You would find something quieter, a space where it all began. And somewhere in that space, you might imagine that page still hanging on the wall. 13 rules. Simple, clear, unassuming, yet powerful enough to shape generations. The final reflection. Some people believe greatness begins with action, with movement, with noise. But often, it begins much earlier. It begins in thought, in reflection, in the quiet decision to create structure where there was none. James Naismith did not invent basketball by accident. He shaped it, carefully, deliberately, through rules that guided not just how the game was played, but how it was understood. Because in the end, the game was never just about scoring. It was about learning, about discipline, about becoming part of something larger than yourself. And those lessons were not they were written quietly. On a single page, in the winter of 1891, a page that did not just define a game, but revealed something timeless, that true freedom is not found without limits. It is found within them.